हेलो फ्रेंड्स, वेलकम टू ऑल। मिरेकल माइंड भारत स्टडी यूथ सर्कल की ओर से मैं डॉक्टर कपिला राठौड़ आप सभी का हार्दिक स्वागत करती हूँ हमारे यूथ स्पेशल सेशन में। तो फ्रेंड्स, वी आर डूइंग अ माइंड ब्लोइंग बुक दैट इज कॉल्ड द मॉन्क हु सोल्ड हिज फरारी। उसके हमने ऑलमोस्ट 2 चैप्टर्स को कंप्लीट कर लिया है। द फर्स्ट चैप्टर इज द वेकअप कॉल एंड द सेकंड चैप्टर इज द मिरेकुलस विजिटर। तो इन दोनों चैप्टर्स को करते हुए हमें ये समझ में आया कि जब ऑथर बात कर रहे हैं जूलियन मेंडल की, तो वो अपनी ट्रांसफॉर्मेशन की यात्रा में कैसे जुड़ते हैं, हाउ ही इज गोइंग टू ट्रांसफर हिमसेल्फ। तो ये पूरी उनकी जर्नी की स्टोरी है। तो इसको हम बहुत अच्छे से समझ रहे हैं फ्रेंड्स, विथ द यंग मास्टर डॉक्टर क्रिश राठौड़। ही इज प्रपोज टू बी अ एमबीबीएस डॉक्टर। सो लेट अस इनवाइट मास्टर क्रिश राठौड़ join with this platform and start the book called The Monk Who Sold His Ferrari, author Robin Sharma. Over to you, Krish.
Yeah, hello everyone. Myself Chris Rathod. So, as we are reading the book The Monk Who Sold His Ferrari, we have already completed 2 chapters. The first is the wake up call, and the second is the mysterious visitor. So, last Saturday we discussed the second chapter, and in that we saw that the author was at home after after a tedious work, and again he was going to leave, about to leave for the next case. He had a visitor at his home who denied to go, and he was insisting that he wanted to meet the author John. So uh, we saw that when he meets the author firstly doesn't recognize him, but when I mean the visitor tells him tells him, I mean, he speaks to him that how can you forget someone who taught you all the lessons that you applied to your life. So recognizing this voice, he immediately recognizes him that it was his mentor, Julian Mantle, and he had completely transformed. Like he was no longer a old a man with wrinkles on his face and no life in his eyes and his face, but instead he was a man filled with life, and he was filled with delight and life. I mean, he was completely energetic, like a man with wrinkles on his face. He was energetic, and he was like he did not look old. He was completely looking out of his age, like he was young. So next we in this chapter, the third chapter, the miraculous transformation of Julian Mantle, we will see how and what happened to Julian Mantle that made the transformation in his life. So let's begin. I'm sharing the screen. Is it visible? Okay.
Yes, Chris, is it visible?
Okay. So chapter 3, the miraculous transformation of Julian Mantle. I was astonished by the new and improved Julian Mantle. How could someone who looked like a tired old man only a few years short ago now looked so vibrant and alive? I wondered in silent disbelief. Was it some magical drug that had allowed him to drink from the fountain of youth? What was the cause of this extraordinary reversal? So here we see that the author, John, he is thinking about what had actually made Julian Mantle look so young. Was it some magical drug or that had allowed him to drink from the fountain of youth? Or was what was the cause for this extraordinary reversal? Julian was the first to speak. He told me that the hyper-competitive legal world had taken its toll on him, not only physically and emotionally, but spiritually. The fast pace and endless demands had worn him out and run him down. He admitted that his body had fallen apart and that his mind had lost its luster. His heart attack was only one symptom of a deeper problem. The constant pressure and exhausting schedule of a world class trial lawyer had also broken his most important and perhaps most human endowment, his spirit. When given the ultimatum by his doctor, either to give up the law or to give up his life, he said he saw the golden opportunity to rekindle the inner fire he had known when he was younger, a fire that had been extinguished as the law became less a pleasure and more a business. Here, the protagonist, Julian, he says him that he was given an ultimatum by his doctor either to choose law or to choose his life. So this gave him an opportunity to actually rekindle the fire that had been extinguished in his life, and so he gave up his passion for law because it had turned more into a business and less of a pleasure. So he gave up law and chose to live his life.
Excuse me, Chris.
Yeah,
We are not seeing you.
not visible.
Yeah, your video is unvisible. Yeah.
Yeah, is it visible now?
Yeah, it's visible.
Okay.
Yes, perfect.
Yeah. Julian grew visibly excited as he recounted how he sold all his material possessions and headed for India, a land whose ancient culture and mystical traditions had always fascinated him. He traveled from tiny village to tiny village, sometimes by foot, sometimes by train, learning new customs, seeing the timeless sights, and growing to love the Indian people who radiated warmth, kindness, and a refreshing perspective on the true meaning of life. Even those who had very little opened their homes and their hearts to this weary visitor from the West. As the days melted into weeks, within this enchanting environment, Julian slowly began to feel alive and whole again, perhaps for the first time since he was a child. His natural curiosity and creative spark steadily returned, along with his enthusiasm and his energy for living. He started to feel more joyful and peaceful, and he began to laugh again. So, as we saw in the last chapter, that Julian sold all his possessions and headed to India. So here Julian mentions that when he headed for India, he was fascinated by the culture and the tradition, the vast diversity in India. As we all know that India is a mystical land, and we are proud to be Indian, as we have so many cultures and so many traditions and so many mystical things that even we are not aware of. So Julian was fascinated by this, and that is why he traveled from village to village, sometimes by foot, sometimes by train. And even those people who had very little to give always welcomed him and with all their hearts. And even being a stranger, he was always welcomed. And Julian was fascinated by the warmth and kindness that every Indian citizen whom he met supported. And he started feeling more joyful and peaceful, and he even began to laugh, which he I think had also forgotten in the pursuit of the material possessions, and his law had made him into less of a laughing human being. Although he embraced every moment of this time in his exotic land, Julian told me that his journey to India was more than a simple vacation to ease an overworked mind. He described his time in this faraway land as a personal odyssey of the self. He confided that he was determined to find out who he really was and what his life was all about before it was too late. To do this, his first priority was to connect to that culture's vast pool of ancient wisdom on living a more rewarding, fulfilling, and enlightened life. Julian here says that it was not just a simple vacation to ease off a overworked mind to go to India. It was more of a spiritual journey. He described it as the personal odyssey of the self. And to do this, his first priority was to connect to to the India's culture in a more rewarding, fulfilling, and enlightened way. I don't mean to sound too off the wall, John, but it was like I had received a command from within, an inner instruction telling me that I was to begin a spiritual voyage to rekindle the spark that I had lost, said Julian. It was a tremendously liberating time for me. Here, Julian says that he had some kind of an inner voice telling him that he had to do this, like he had to come here and explore himself, to begin a spiritual voyage to rekindle the spark that he had lost. The more he explored, the more he heard of Indian monks who had lived beyond the age of 100, monks who, despite their advanced age, maintained youthful, energetic, and vital lives. The more he traveled, the more he learned of ageless yogis who had mastered the art of mind control and spiritual awakening. And the more he saw, the more he longed to understand the dynamics behind these miracles of human nature, hoping to apply their philosophies to his own life. Here he describes that he saw yogis, the monks, who, despite living more than like 100 years, still looked youthful and cheerful and full of energy and life. Uh, it was because they had mastered the art of mind control and had awakened spiritually. During the early stages of his journey, Julian sought out many well known and highly respected teachers. He told me that each one of them welcomed him with open arms and open hearts, sharing whatever gems of knowledge they had absorbed over lifetimes spent in quiet contemplation on the loftier issues surrounding their existence. Julian also attempted to describe the beauty of the ancient temples which were strewn across the mystical landscape of India, edifices which stood as loyal gatekeepers to the wisdom of the ages. He said he was moved by the sacredness of these surroundings. It was a very magical time of my life, John. Here I was, a tired old litigator who had sold everything from my racehorse to my Rolex and had packed all that remained into a large rucksack that would be my constant companion as I ventured into the timeless traditions of the East. Was it hard to leave? I wondered aloud, unable to contain my curiosity. Here, author describes that since he left everything, every possession, and he had only one thing, his large rucksack, his backpack that he carried with him, and it was the only thing that he had while on his journey to the east. So the author asks him that was it hard to leave? Then the Julian replies, actually, it was the easiest thing I have ever done. The decision to give up my practice and all my worldly possessions felt natural. Albert Camus once said that real generosity toward the future consists in giving all to what is present. Well, that's exactly what I did. I knew I had to change, so I decided to listen to my heart and do it in a very dramatic way. My life became so much simpler and meaningful when I left the baggage of my past behind. The moment I stopped spending so much time chasing the big pleasures of life, I began to enjoy the little ones, like watching the stars dancing in a moonlit sky or soaking in the sunbeams of a glorious summer morning. And India is such an intellectually stimulating place that I rarely thought of all I had left. Here, the author describes that it was not at all hard for him to leave all these things and his life. He said that it was a very easy thing for him to do. Like, it was not at all hard, and he even enjoyed doing this. Like, he was free from all the baggage of the past. Like, he left everything behind so that he had a clear mind, and hello,
Yes, we were disconnected. So
YouTube live is not there.
it is live streaming. Go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, so as we were discussing that he did not enjoy the little things, but now that he left all these baggages behind, He was able to think with his free mind and even enjoy the little things like stars dancing in the moonlit sky and soaking in the sunbeams of a glorious summer morning. Those initial meetings with the learned and the scholarly of that exotic culture, though intriguing, did not yield the knowledge for which Julian hungered. The wisdom that he desired and the practical techniques that he hoped would change the quality of his life continued to elude him in those early days of his odyssey. It was not until Julian had been in India for about 7 months that he had his first real break. So here,
The screen is not sharing, Krish. Sorry to disturb you.
is it not?
No.
Is it now?
Starting.
Okay.
Yeah. Yes, it is visible now.
Okay. So here we saw that he, uh, it had been already 7 months, but he did not experience any kind of thing that he had expected. Like he thought that he would yield knowledge instantly, but after 7 months that he had his first real break. It was while he was in Kashmir, an ancient and mystical state that sits sleepily at the foot of the Himalayas, that he had the good man he had the good fortune to meet a gentleman named Yogi Krishnan. This slight man with a clean-shaven head had also been a lawyer in his previous incarnation, as he often joked with a toothy grin. Fed up with the hectic pace that personifies modern Delhi, he too gave up his possessions and retreated to a world of greater simplicity. Becoming a caretaker of the village temple, Krishnan said he had come to know himself and his purpose in the larger scheme of life. So here, the author describes, I mean, the Julian describes that it was in Kashmir that he finally met someone named Yogi Krishnan. And he said that Yogi Krishnan was also a lawyer in his previous incarnation, as Yogi Krishnan mentioned. Uh, and this even he was fed up with the hectic life that he was living as a lawyer, especially in the city like New Delhi, which is very crowded, and all you do there is run back and forth whole day for work. Like you don't get time for yourself in that. So it was really hectic for him, as Yogi Krishnan described. So he too gave up for his profession as a lawyer, and came here to this mystical land of Kashmir. And after coming to the village temple, after becoming a caretaker there, he got to know about himself and his purpose of his life. I was tired of living my life like one long air raid drill. I realized that my mission is to serve others and somehow to contribute to making this world a better place. Now I live to give, he said Julian. I spend my days and nights at this temple, living an austere but fulfilling life. I share my realizations with all those who come here to pray. I serve those in need. I'm not a priest. I'm simply a man who has found his soul. So, what a beautiful thing Yogi Krishnan says, that he is not a priest. He's not some kind of monk, as he describes himself. He is just a man who found his soul. And the one who finds his soul is, as we say, enlightened person. And he was, he describes that he spent his day and night at this temple, living austere and fulfilling life, unlike the one which he lived there as a lawyer in New Delhi. Julian informed this lawyer turned yogi of his own story. He spoke of his former life of prominence and privilege. He told Yogi Krishnan of his hunger for wealth and his obsession with work. He revealed with great emotion his inner turmoil and the crisis of the spirit he had experienced when once bright light of his life began to flicker. in the winds of an out of balance lifestyle. Here, Julian describes his own life to Yogi Krishnan about how he was obsessed with work and he was running after wealth. All he wanted was just fame and material possessions and money. He describes he completely surrendered and told everything about himself, like his inner turmoil within himself and the crisis of the spirit that he had experienced, and which had lost. He had lost balance of his life. I too walked this path, my friend. I too have felt the pain you have felt. Yet I have learned that everything happens for a reason. Offered Yogi Krishnan sympathetically. Every event has a purpose, and every setback its lesson. I have realized that failure, whether of the personal, professional, or even spiritual kind, is essential to personal expansion. It brings inner growth and a whole host of psychic rewards. Never regret your past. Rather, embrace it as the teacher that it is. See how beautifully Yogi Krishnan describes a very important lesson in life, that we should never regret our past. Like everything that happens, it happens for a reason, and we need to live, and we need to live with uh, taking past as our teacher. Like it always teaches us something, and be it personal, professional, even spiritual failure, it is meant for a better expansion in that particular area of our life, and it comes with a whole host of psychic rewards, as Yogi describes. After hearing these words, Julian told me that he felt great exultation. Perhaps in Yogi Krishnan, he had found the mentor he was searching for. Who better than another former hotshot lawyer who, through his own spiritual odyssey, had found a better way of living to teach him the secrets of creating a life of more balance, enchantment, and delight? I need your help, Krishnan. I need to learn how to build a richer, fuller life. Here, Julian describes that he saw the mentor as John saw the mentor in Julian. Julian himself saw his mentor in Yogi Krishnan, as he thought that who was better than a former lawyer, as Julian himself was, who can teach him how to go through his own spiritual journey. So he asks Krishnan for help. I would be honored to assist you in any way that I can, offered the yogi. But may I give you one suggestion? Said Yogi Krishnan. Sure, said Julia. For as long as I have been caring for this temple in this little village, I have heard whisperings of a mystical band of sages living high in the Himalayas. Legend has it that they have discovered some sort of system that will profoundly improve the quality of anyone's life. And I don't just mean physically. It is supposed to be a holistic, integrated set of ageless principles and timeless techniques to liberate the potential of the mind, body, and soul. Julian was fascinated. This seemed perfect. So here Krishnan describes that he will help him in any way possible. So he says him that he has heard of whisperings of a band of sages. Like there is a group of sages who live in somewhere hidden in these mountains and this area, and they have a secret therapy. Like they have some secret mantra or some secret principles, like which will help him heal not just physically but to much greater realm. Julian was fascinated, and it seemed perfect to him. Just exactly where do these monks live? Asked Julian. No one knows, and I regret that I am too old to start searching. But I will tell you one thing, my friend. Many have tried to find them, and many have failed, with tragic consequences. The higher reaches of the Himalayas are treacherous beyond compare. Even the most skilled climber is rendered helpless against the natural ravages. But if it is the golden keys to radiant health, lasting happiness, and inner fulfillment that you are searching for, I do not have the wisdom you seek. They do. So here, Yogi describes that he doesn't know where they actually live. Like no one actually does, but many have come to find where these sages live. and when he failed, as the Himalayas are not some cup of cake that anyone can climb and you know travel through the Himalayas and reach the top, or even find the sages. So, but if Julian was dedicated to finding the golden keys to radiant health and inner fulfillment that he was searching for, it was not Yogi Krishnan, but the sages of Sivana that actually have the answers to all the questions that Julian asked. Julian, never one to give up easily, pressed Yogi Krishnan again. Are you certain that you have no idea where they live? All I can tell you is that the locals in this village know them as the great sages of Sivana. In their mythology, Sivana means oasis of enlightenment. These monks are revered as if they are divine in their constitution and influence. If I knew where they could be found, I would be duty bound to tell you. But honestly, I do not know. No one does, for that matter. So here, Yogi describes that they are known as the sages of Sivana, the great sages of Sivana. And in their mythology, Sivana means oasis of enlightenment. And the villagers, villagers know them as what they are known, but they do not know where they live. So even if Yogi did know, he was duty bound to tell him, but he doesn't know. In fact, no one else knows. The next morning, as the first rays of the Indian sun danced along the colorful horizon, Julian set out on his trek to the lost land of Sivana. At first, he thought about hiring a Sherpa to guide him, Sherpa guide to aid him in his climb through the mountains. But for some strange reason, his instincts told him that this was one journey he would have to make alone. So instead, for perhaps the first time in his life, he shed the shackles of reason and placed his trust in his intuition. He felt he would be safe. He somehow knew he would find what he was looking for. So, with missionary zeal, he started to climb. Here, Julian says that even though the next morning he started his trek to find where the great sages of Sivana lived. So, instead of having a Sherpa guide having nearby, he did not uh, go along with him. Instead, he chose to go alone. And for the first time in his life, as he was a lawyer, he always wanted some reason to do something. But instead, this time, he trusted his intuition, which said that he had to go alone and he would be safe for some reason. So he started to climb. The first few days were easy. Somehow he would catch up to one of the cheerful citizens of the village below, who happened to be walking on one of the footpaths, perhaps searching for just the right piece of wood for a carving or seeking the sanctuary that this surreal place offered to all those who dared to venture this high into the mountains, into the heavens. At other times, he hiked alone, using this time to silently reflect on where he had been in his life and where he was now headed. So for the first few days, it was easy for the author because he would find some person along on his journey. So that time he would feel secure as there was someone nearby who might help in case of any emergency. So and other times when he was alone, he would contemplate about his past, like what he was doing wrong. I mean, what he did wrong and all. He was just thinking to himself. It did not take long. Long before the village below was nothing more than a tiny speck on this marvelous canvas of natural splendor. The majesty of the snow capped peaks of the Himalayas made his heart beat faster, and for one long moment took his breath away. He felt a oneness with his surroundings, a kind of kinship that two old friends might enjoy after many years spent listening to each other's innermost thoughts and laughing at each other's jokes. The fresh mountain air cleared his mind and energized his spirit. Having traveled the world many times over, Julian had thought he had seen it all, but he had never seen beauty like this. The wonders of which he drank at that magical time were an exquisite tribute to the symphony of nature. At once, he felt joyous, exhilarated, and carefree. It was here, high above the humanity below, that Julian slowly ventured out of the cocoon of the ordinary and began to explore the realm of the extraordinary. So here, Julian describes that after a few days, the village that he traversed through, where he met Yogi Krishnan, was nothing more than just a tiny speck on the marvelous canvas. Like the village was far away from him now, and it just seemed like a small dot on the page of paper. Uh, then he says that he felt oneness with his surroundings, and just like how two old friends meet and when after many years and laugh at each other's jokes, he felt that kind of friendship with the surroundings, with the Himalayas, and he was energized. The fresh mountain air energized his spirit. I still remember the words that were going through my mind up there, said Julian. I thought that ultimately life is all about choices. One's destiny unfolds according to the choices one makes, and I felt certain that the choice I had made was the right one. I knew my life would never be the same, and that something marvelous, maybe even miraculous, was about to happen to me. It was an amazing awakening. He says that uh, there was something miraculous or marvelous going to happen to him, and that was his inner voice speaking to him. As Julian climbed into a rarefied region of the Himalayas, he told me that he grew anxious, but it was those good kind of jitters, like the ones I had on prom night or right before an exciting case began, and the media was chasing me up the courtroom steps. And even though I didn't have the benefit of a guide or a map, the way was clear, and a thin, lightly traveled path led me higher into the deepest reaches of the Himalayas. It was like I had some kind of inner compass, nudging me gently towards my destination. I don't think I could have stopped climbing if I ever wanted to. Julian was excited, his words spilling out like a gushing mountain stream after the rains. He says that he was kind of nervous in the beginning, like the nervous kinds that happened when he was on a prom night or like before starting a case, when the news reporters surrounded him and asked him all sorts of questions. It was that kind of nervousness. But and even though he didn't have a guide or a map, he saw his way. Like he thought that uh, a stream of light was guiding him to go along in a path. As he traveled for 2 more days along the route that he prayed would take him to Savannah, Julian's thoughts wandered back to his former life. Though he felt entirely liberated from the stress and strain that personified his former world, he did wonder whether he could really spend the rest of his days without the intellectual challenge that the legal profession had offered him since he left Harvard Law School. His thoughts then wandered back to his oak paneled office in a glittering downtown skyscraper and the idyllic summer home he had sold for a pittance. He thought about his old friends with whom he would frequent the finest of restaurants in the most glamorous locales. He also thought about his prized Ferrari and how his heart would soar when he gunned the engine and all his ferocity sprang to life with a roar. So, as he traveled 2 more days, Julian wondered about how his life had been before he came to India, before he sold all his possessions. He wondered about his Ferrari, and he wondered about the office that was oak paneled, uh, about how he sold his home for nothing, and how he had his old friends with whom he would go to the restaurants. As he ventured deeper into the depths of this mystical place, his reflections of the past were quickly interrupted by the stunning marvels of the moment. It was while he was soaking in the gifts of nature's intelligence that something startling happened. From the corner of his eye, he saw another figure, dressed strangely in a long, flowing red robe topped by a dark blue hood. slightly ahead of him on the path. Julian was astonished to see anyone at this isolated spot that had taken him 7 treacherous days to reach. As he was many miles away from any real civilization and still uncertain as to where his ultimate destination of Savannah could be found, he yelled out to his fellow traveler. Julian saw someone who was dressed in red robe with a blue hood on it, and it was shocking for him as in this isolated place it was hard to find anyone. But he saw someone, and he tried to contact him. The figure refused to respond and accelerated his pace along the path they were both climbing, not even giving Julian the courtesy of a backward glance of acknowledgement. Soon the mysterious traveler was running, his red robe dancing gracefully behind him like a crisp cotton sheets hanging from a clothesline on a windy autumn day. So the mysterious person who was along his way did not even respond, or even didn't find it amusing, or didn't find it important to even look back at Julian. He just simply climbed, and afterwards he began running, his red robe dancing gracefully behind him like crisp cotton sheets. Please, friend, I need your help to find Sivana, yelled Julian. I've been traveling for 7 days with little food and water. I think I'm lost. The figure came to an abrupt stop. Julian approached cautiously while the traveler stood remarkably silent and still. His head did not move, his hands did not move, and his feet kept their place. Julian could see nothing of the face beneath the hood, but was struck by the contents of the small basket in the hands of the traveler. Within the basket was a collection of the most delicate and beautiful flowers Julian had ever seen. The figure clutched the basket tighter as Julian drew nearer, as if to display both love of these prized possessions and a distrust of this tall Westerner, about as common to these parts as dew in the desert. So, as he was calling for help, like he was thinking, Julian was telling him that he was traveling for 7 days and was unable to find Sivana with little food and water. He wanted his help. The person who was traveling along with him, he wanted his help. So the mysterious person abruptly stopped. His head did not move, his hands did not move, and he was completely still. He had a basket of flowers that were very beautiful, as Julian describes, and as Julian went nearer to him, the mysterious person, clutched the basket in his hands more tighter, as if to, display his love for his flowers. And also, he was insecure that he could not trust the person from the West, as he calls him, Westerner, and was as common as dew in the desert. So, as you cannot find dew, which is water droplets in the desert, the same way the tall Western person, who was not common in this part of the world, in Kashmir, and more importantly in the high mountains, higher Himalayas. So he was distrustful for him. Julian gazed at the traveler with an intense curiosity. A quick burst of a sunbeam revealed that it was a man's face under the loosely fitting hood. But Julian had never seen a man quite like this one. Though he was at least his own age, there were very striking features of this person which left Julian mesmerized and caused him to simply stop and stare for what seemed like an eternity. His eyes were cat like and so penetrating that Julian was forced to look away. His olive complexioned skin was supple and smooth. His body looked strong and powerful, and though the man's hands gave away the fact that he was not young, he radiated such an abundance of youthfulness and vitality that Julian felt hypnotized by what appeared before him, much like a child watching the magician at his first magic show. So here Julian says that he saw the man's face, and just by looking at him, he was as if he saw a ghost. He was so much both not in a scary way, but in a shocking and in a good way. He never saw a figure like him before. Though he looked like his own age, but he was more youthful. He was more godly, as you can say. He just felt hypnotized by what appeared to him. This must be one of the great sages of Sivana, Julian thought to himself, scarcely able to contain his delight at his discovery. I am Jilian Mantle. I have come to learn from the sages of Sivana. Do you know where I might find them? He asked. The man looked thoughtfully at this weary visitor from the west. His serenity and peace made him appear angelic in nature, enlightened in substance. The man spoke softly, almost in a whisper. Why is it that you seek these sages, my friend? Sensing that he had indeed found one of the mystical monks who had eluded so many before him, Julian opened his heart and poured out his odyssey to the traveler. He spoke of his former life and of the crisis of spirit he had struggled with, how he had traded his health and his energy for the fleeting rewards that his law practice brought him. He spoke of how he had traded the riches of his soul for a fat bank account and the illusionary gratification of his live fast, die young lifestyle. And he told him of his travels in mystical India and of his meetings with Yogi Krishna, the former trial lawyer from New Delhi, who had also given up his former life in the hope of finding inner harmony and lasting peace. So here, author talks with the sage, and he was not knowing at first, but he thought to himself that he might be one of the sages that he was seeking for. So he asks, "Where do I find them?" And the sage tells him that, "Why do you want to find him? Like, what is your true intention?" So Julian pours completely all his story to himself, just like he did to Yogi Krishnan, and he tells him all about his life and how he believed in live fast, die young lifestyle, which almost everyone in this world nowadays is doing. They care less about their health and more about just living blindly, like a rat race, in a rat race. So he also describes Yogi Krishnan, who was also a lawyer from New Delhi and had given up to come here and live with his true purpose of life. The traveler remained silent and still. It was not until Julian spoke of his burning, almost obsessive desire to acquire the ancient principles of enlightened living that the man spoke again. Placing an arm on Julian's shoulder, the man said gently, "If you truly have heartfelt desire to learn the wisdom of a better way, then it is my duty to help you. I am indeed one of those sages that you have come so far in search of. You are the first person to find us in many years. Congratulations. I admire your tenacity. You must have been quite a lawyer," he offered. So here the figure says him that indeed he is the sage, and if Julian really wants to find his true purpose, then he will surely help him. And he congratulated him, and he praised him that he must have been quite a lawyer that he reached here, and it was after so many years that someone finally met the sages of the Savannah. He paused as if he was a little uncertain of what to do next, and then went on. "If you like, you may come with me as my guest to our temple. It rests in a hidden part of this mountain region, still many hours away from here. My brothers and sisters will welcome you with open arms. We will work together to teach you the ancient principles and strategies that our ancestors have passed down through the ages. Before I take you into our private world and share our collected knowledge for filling your life with more joy and strength and purpose, I must request one promise from you," requested the sage. "Upon learning these timeless truths, you must return to your homeland in the West and share this wisdom with all those who need to hear it. Though we are isolated in here, in these magical mountains, we are aware of the turmoil your world is in. Good people are losing their way. You must give them the hope that they deserve. And more importantly, you must give them the tools to fulfill their dreams. This is all I ask." So the sage tells him that the temple he can come to the temple, and his brothers and sisters will take care of him very nicely and welcome him. Which the temple is also far away from here, so they will need to travel more. And he says him that he will teach him everything that he wants to learn, but he had asked him for one promise. The promise was that he he had to teach everything that he was being taught here to the West when he goes and returns to his home, and bring all the good people that are losing their way back on their track, and give them the hope, and give them all the tools that they need to fulfilling their life. That is all he asks him. Julian instantly accepted the sage's terms and promised that he would carry their precious message to the past, to the West. As the two men moved still higher up the mountain path to the lost village of Sivana, the Indian sun started to set, a fiery red circle clipping into a soft, magical slumber after a long and weary day. Julian told me he has never forgotten the majesty of that moment, walking with an ageless Indian monk for whom he somehow felt a brotherly love, traveling to a place he had longed to find, with all its wonders and many mysteries. This was definitely the most memorable moment of my life. He confided in me. Julian had always believed that life come down to a few key moments. This was one of them. Deep inside his soul, he somehow sensed that his this was the first moment of the rest of his life, a life soon to be much more than it had ever been. Here, Julian describes that it was uh, he instantly accepted the terms that the promise that the sage asked for, and he felt a brotherly love for the monk. And other than that, afterwards, when the author heard all this, the author says him that uh, and I mean the Julian tells him that it was the most memorable moment of his life, and then he author describes that it was uh, this moment was going to be memorable, and this was going to be a turning point in Julian's life. So that ends this chapter. Chapter 3 ends here, and the next Saturday we'll be doing chapter 4, a magical meeting with the sages of Sivana. So thank you, everyone. Uh, we'll see you on the next Saturday. Thank you.